if you are an e-commerce merchant, you are running ads, you are having your search listings on Google, etc., the vast majority of your potential customers will not even click to your page. Now, what happens when they click to their page? A big part of them will bounce, so they will never take any action on the page. This is known as bouncing and can be calculated into bounce rate. So we're going to cover that in this video. Before we do that, if you haven't already, please subscribe, like the video if you end up liking it, etc. We do a lot of e-commerce related content on this channel, not advertising, everything related to conversion optimization, average order value, lifetime value optimization. So let's jump into this one and talk about conversion rates and bounce rates. Now, before we dive into this one, I think it's important to define the term. So bounce rates are a Google Analytics metric where you have a number of page visits, and then out of those single page visits, you calculate how many actually continue. So in an equation, it would be the total visits viewing one page only, and then the total entries to the page. So simple example, total visits viewing one page only, let's say 5 people, and 10 people in total have entered that page. Now your bounce rate is 50%. Very important that you don't confuse bounce rate with exit rate, because it is not the same thing. Exit rate takes into account all the people, whether they land to the page or whether they flow the page. So people can enter page 2 ways. They can land to it as the first page that they entered the store, or they can flow to it from other links in the store. So in that second example, that person leaving that page wouldn't be a bounce. It would be an exit because they didn't start on that particular page. All right, so now that we have defined the bounce rate, let's move on and see how we can actually find it. So this is a really fast one, but on Google Analytics, if you are using the older version, the Google Analytics 3, as most of you still are, you can go to behavior and overview, and here you have bounce rates. And here you can, of course, also compare it with different timelines. I recommend, if you haven't done store changes for a while, you can use a longer period just to get more sample size into your data. It's important to know where to find this and how to use this, because then you can also segment it. So, for example, mobile, desktop, or according to countries, traffic sources, etc. We will dive into that deeper a bit later, but let's first look into the new Google Analytics as well. So, important, Google Analytics 4, this version, does not have bounce rates. What they do have is what's called an engagement rate. So you can search for it here, and it will give it to you as one of the answers. So engagement rate is, in a way, the opposite of bounce rate. And from this number, you could calculate 100% minus 82.97, get that 17% as the bounce rate. However, it's not an exact one-to-one comparable with the old analytics, because this also counts different events on the page. So, for example, if they spend more than 10 seconds or engaged with some kind of conversion event, then that would also be counted. So don't compare this one-to-one and say, like, I moved to GA4 and now my bounce rate dropped massively. It's not a one-to-one. With Shopify, this is not one of their key metrics there, so you won't be able to see it. That's why it's really a Google Analytics related metric. However, any serious e-commerce merchant should definitely use Google Analytics anyway. So from that perspective, there's no issues. All right, let's move on and let's look at some statistics about conversion rate, and then we can dive into how to reduce it. So just to give you a quick perspective on this one, e-commerce and retail websites in general have a fairly low bounce rates because they are pages and sites where you would visit a lot of pages in general. So if you are looking for a certain type of product, you would go to that store, look around, etc., counting different page views. So from that perspective, e-commerce merchants are in a good position. It's a lot more difficult in blogs or landing pages to get people to other pages, because that's a case where, for example, in blogs, they are just looking for that information, but very likely to quit once they find it, etc. And on a landing page, you often have like one action to take only. So if people don't take that action, they are often just gone. And it's good to keep in mind that this also varies a lot between industries. So don't get hurt if your bounce rate is a little bit higher than what your friend has in their store. It always depends. So it's important to understand why and how these differ usually, so you don't start panicking if your bounce rates are high. Then also depends a lot on your device mix as well as your traffic mix. So here, for example, email, if you have a lot of existing customers, etc., and they click from their platform, more likely to go and do a little bit more pages at once rather than just stick to one single page. On the other spectrum, you have display and social, where they would be less engaged, a little bit in a different mindset, etc. as well. Then with the devices, this is usually a case where mobiles have a little bit of a higher bounce rate than desktops. But no significant changes there, just mostly because it's a more distracted experience and people are more time bound on mobile. So you'll see this kind of slight effects there. All right, let's next look into how we can reduce that bounce rate. So for this one, I'll start with a little bit of research and then we can jump into it. But I'm here with Google Analytics and we have the site content, all pages under the behavior tab. And here I'm just looking to get a little bit of context of which pages are high bounce rate pages. And here we have the bounce rate as one of the metrics. Now, in order to get rid of all the pages, because we have over 700 pages here, I'm going to use a filter here. And you can just follow me along at home. So you can include pages that have page views that are greater than, say, 5,000, 6,000 in this scenario. So let's apply that one. And then we're going to see the bounce rates. I'm going to use a little plugin here in order to more visualize this. You don't have to do that. And here we have the home page has a high bounce rate. Store HTML, these kind of pages. And on the other end, we have some that have a very low bounce rate. So if you ever see this kind of thing, this must be a tracking issue, because out of 7,000 people, nobody left. So that's very unlikely to happen. I should correct, like this was a little bit of people that left, but none of them landed on the page and left. So this must be a page where you can only flow to it. So it's good to keep in mind if you spot something like that. All right, on the home page then, we could start thinking through why people are leaving. Now, in general, this is a Google merchandise store where this data is from, so they should know that they are going to find Google products. So one of the things would be to inspire visitors to browse more in any way we can. For example, showing product recommendations on here. So I think Google has done a very good job of that. I think one thing that they haven't done such a good job with is providing a better overview of their different categories. So they're just here. And usually if you have it on mobile, you will only have that under the burger menu. So from that perspective, many users might not actually know that there's a lot of different options. So on this particular page, for example, you could definitely make it longer. There could be links in the footer to help those people that have fallen behind and not found what they wanted so far. And generally, it's a very desktop focused page in general. So the key thing here is understanding why people have left so early. So we can start to sort of read their mind, identifying the user objections with different methods. And a good one here with the bounce rates is to use heat maps and scroll maps, because you only have one page. So for Google Analytics, it's not that useful. It will tell you what kind of numbers you're working with, but since it only tracks that one single page, and then only information you had is so many people bounce. But what happens on the page can definitely be identified with the different heat mapping tools. Another thing that can be often a problem is technical issues. Like here, for example, there might be a technical issue on some mobiles, since I'm at least seeing like this. Also, page load times can really hurt. If you see a big distribution between mobile and desktop, it might be because of page load times. Then also generally you'd want to focus the visitors a little bit. It's fine to provide a lot of options, but having distracting elements can feel a little bit overwhelming. And then if people lose that confidence in themselves to continue and do this now, then oftentimes they will just bounce and save it for later. It's less consuming mentally the code through a page without a lot of moving elements and carousels. The same goes with the pop-ups as well. So if you have a pop-up right away or a lot of pop-up elements, so for example, live chat covering the terms and conditions or the cookie policy, and then you might have an affiliate program and review app, etc., then that can also really hurt the experience because you spend the first few seconds just closing these different things. And then it's not pleasant, and suddenly like what is not instantly pleasant gets ignored. So pay attention to that one as well. Now, especially when it comes to blog posts, people do them very wrong. And I hear e-commerce merchants saying this all the time, that the blog posts are just basically waste because all the people bounce anyway. Like 90% of people often bounce from their blog post. For that one, it's good to model big affiliate sites. Like here, I have Credit Donkey, for example, as one of the examples. And you can see how they're doing things. So they are providing a little bit of a bait here in the beginning. So to make money, you need to invest money wisely. You can't really disagree with the statement. And then what are they going to get? Objection handling here if I don't have money, etc. Good principles there. And then they have a lot of links as well to further people into other pages here. So that's why people get deeper in the site. And once you have a person a couple of pages deep, it's a lot more difficult to quit at that time. So that's on the blog parts. And also in general, if you can evoke curiosity like Tifano and company is doing with Jay-Z and Beyonce here, that can also be powerful. So you have massive social proof with this one. And then people are more likely to get curious about this in general. So what are they wearing? How can I be part of this as well? So that's a good way to evoke curiosity using social proof as well, if you can, of course. In general, you want to also look into relevancy. So if this matches the audience, matches the expectation when they're clicking the page, matches the advertisement, and of course, if there's a natural path forward. So for this, like a natural path forward is of course shopping around. So that's one of the things that is very difficult to nail, your unique selling proposition. And that's why we are going to cover that over in the very next video. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on the video. I'll put a lot of effort into making it understandable and practical with a lot of examples like here, and you're going to really like it. So thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.